Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the second episode of Quest the Top 20. Today I played a couple single province games against Dominar. I think they were very good learning games, so today we're going to be going over them. If you enjoy, please make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, or you'll always hit 7 and never be able to buy another province. Alright, let's get into the video. Hope you enjoy. Alright, so taking a look at this board, we definitely have an engine here. We got Chapel, so we can thin down super quickly. We've got a bunch of other treasures, actually, except for we basically are just going to want to go for Chapel just because it's there. We've got Ghost Town and Werewolf that'll help us make the engine. There's Groom for the gaining. You can groom gaining an Ironmonger and a horse, which is pretty nice for consistency. You've got Forge here, which I think you've definitely got to get because near the end you can start trashing your engine components in order to get a couple extra provinces. I technically said that this was a single province games, except for I don't think it's really a thing here to build to consistent double province. You'd just be cannibalizing your engine too quick. And so basically the strat will be to pick up a forge near the end, use it to threaten to get 2 provinces, though we can only do that a couple of times, and basically go from there. Alright, getting into the gameplay here, I do get the lucky 5-2, which is pretty good for me. I've got a bunch of fibers to choose from. I don't really want the embassy because I don't want to give them a silver. They've got junk dealer, replace, trading post, all trashers, but I've already got Chapel for that, so I decided to go with a werewolf. This might also help me if I can line up a ghost town with a werewolf and trash a bunch of stuff. I get the Chapel. My opponent gets a Groom with 4-3, which I definitely think is reasonable. It's always a good idea to open with the gainer. Then, of course, my opponent gets Chapel. With my 3 coin here, I know that my actions are down there, and so I decide to get a Ghost Town to hope to line them up, which I do. So my opponent is going to trash. They get 2 estates, and then discards the Groom, so not the best for them, having the collision there. So we're off to a pretty good start. Here I get an interesting choice about whether or not to play this Werewolf. If I play it, I do get to trash and then still buy something, except for in return, my Werewolf and Chapel miss the shuffle, which is not good. I'll have 3 junk cards at the top of my deck. The thing is, if I do play my Werewolf, I might get to trash another estate, and I also get to play a Ghost Town, which will accelerate my next turn, and so eventually I decide to go for that. I actually do get a really good draw here. I draw both of my estates, and so I'm able to trash them both, and I get a Ghost Town in order to accelerate my next turn. So on my opponent's next turn, my opponent has 5, and so that's probably a Werewolf. Even though they don't have the Ghost Town right now, the Werewolf is definitely something that you want, and you get it later, and you can also use it to Hex, so it's definitely a good move. Right now, I could trash my coppers, but I have to be a little careful because I don't really have much payload in my deck. This 4 coppers is 2/3 of the money I've got, so I decide not to trash. I decide that I'd just buy something, and I'd also get the arena points as a little bonus. Not like that would particularly incentivize me otherwise. But I get the Groom because it's good for gaining. I could get the silvers, and that enabled me to trash my coppers. So right here, my opponent will play a Groom, getting an Ironmonger. Probably a good move to pick up an Ironmonger. Ironmonger is just a pretty solid card, and it's spammable, and they get a Ghost Town to accelerate the next turn. Since I get my Ghost Town, I get to kick off here, and now I drew 6 coppers, so I could even get like a gold. Probably not like I'd really want to. I probably just want like another Werewolf here, or another engine piece. And so I'm thinking about how many coppers to trash here. I've got my Groom already, and so that means that I could probably trash a little more aggressively. My Groom is on top of my deck, so I know I'm going to be gaining those silvers next turn, so I decide that I'm just going to trash 3 coppers, and that's going to give me enough still for a Ghost Town. Next turn, since I've got my Groom on top of my deck, if I have 2 Ghost Towns, I'm going to be able to both gain and play those silvers. So my opponent does have the Ghost Town, so this is going to enable them to kick off with a Werewolf. With the Groom, they're going to get the Ironmonger and the Horse again. They're still a little light on the payload, except for I guess they can use the Groom whenever they want. Finally, with 5 coin, my opponent gets a Werewolf, which I'm not too sure about because they only have 1 Ghost Town, but if they line up their Ironmonger, it could be fine. I'm going to Groom for 2 silvers here and then draw the silvers. This is also going to enable me to trash my coppers. So here I'm going to get a Werewolf because I figure I'll eventually need one. It might be a little questionable. I might already be drawing my deck, so it's time to increase payload. But I really want to be drawing my Groom every turn. I don't really want to dud, and having 2 extra junk cards might not be appealing. So I decide to go for the Werewolf. Alright, so my opponent is going to use the Ironmongers to swim through the coppers. Even though they haven't fully trashed yet, the Ironmonger is definitely helping out. Here my opponent decides to only trash 1 estate. And they discard the Werewolf, which gives them the VP from Arena, which is doubly good because I'm not getting that VP. So with my Groom, I definitely want another engine piece here. I could go for the silvers, but I'm not going to be able to play them this turn. So at this point, I decide to get an Ironmonger and a horse. And so this will allow me to hex. And here, as you can see here, I'm trying to learn from last video. I'm not hovering my mouse over werewolf, even though I'm pretty sure I want one. And so I change it to be in the chapel. But I do decide that I want a werewolf, though, just because I get the extra hexing, and because it makes it less likely that I won't draw my deck, especially because I've got multiple ghost towns which I can play each turn. So my opponent is going to get the groom this turn, and they decide to get an engine piece again. At this point, they're pretty light on the payload, so I may have gotten the silvers if I were them. They decide to discard that werewolf, and they get more VP. They also give me miserable, so it's basically like a 6 VP swing, so it's like they got a province this turn. I mean, man, this guy. But nonetheless, I think I'm a little ahead here because I'm up a werewolf, and I'm also up a ghost town, so at this point, I'm going to try to go for provinces from here on out. I play my horse, and I have 4 silvers, so if I just keep playing those 4 silvers every turn, which I will hopefully be able to, because I've got 3 werewolves and 3 ghost towns. At this point, I realize that my arena autoplay is on, and I don't like autoplays just because, even though it's a pretty good feature to have for new players, I think like it makes you miss these edge cases, these little niche plays where doing something unexpected could be good. Anyway, I'm going to get to hex my opponent twice, except for the hexes aren't going to be that good. My opponent, again, starts to swim through their deck. Now they're starting to draw those Ironmongers acting as villages, and so that's pretty good. I think I may have underestimated Ironmonger a little bit this game. Anyway, with the overdraw, my opponent's going to be able to groom, gaining another groom, and then using that groom to gain 2 silvers. So pretty good play by them. So here with the chapel, my opponent will only trash 1 copper and use the rest to get a province, probably to put some pressure on me. They've got the extra groom, so they're going to be gaining a bunch. But anyway, I'm going to draw my deck again. I'm going to use the groom to try to get more consistent at this point, and so I decide to pick up another Ironmonger and Horse. I just find this kind of amusing. Discard for 0 VP. So yes, I will discard that chapel for 0 VP, and I'll get another province. Alright, so at this point we're basically both drawing deck. Hopefully my opponent will dud at some point, because they do have all those extra coppers, except if they don't dud, then they're going to win. So I'm going to have to think of something. My opponent here does hit 7, and at first I'm kind of celebrating, but then they get a forge. I realize you definitely got to get a forge at some point, because you can threaten to get 2 provinces, which is definitely something you need. And so, although I'm drawing my deck this turn, I mean, I can eventually afford to start sacrificing my engine pieces, especially now that I keep gaining more and more with Groom. Here, with this Groom, I'm going to decide to get a Ghost Town, because then I've got 2 Ghost Towns this turn, 2 Ghost Towns that turn. It'll be perfect. And I have to think a little bit, but I think you definitely can't pass up the Forge here. The Forge also gives you some flexibility to mill province if you're in that position. So that's good. Here my opponent does have to groom an estate to keep their turn going, but I think you definitely just have to do that if you do have to do that. The groom gaining an estate is also a little more forage food, and you can always trash it with chapel. Alright, yeah, so here my opponent makes a big mistake. They trash their coppers and their silvers, which is pretty bad because then they have to spend an extra turn just building it back up. Because here, as you can see, I know that my opponent can't double because they cannot both forge a province and then also have the money for a province. Alright, so here, this Ironmonger, I really should have kept the silver, but I do decide to discard it just out of habit. If I were tracking my deck, I know I'd have engine components down there, so I'd want to set them up for next turn, but unfortunately, I don't, so now I just have to groom an estate in order to get the silver, and I also have to play that horse down there, which definitely suboptimal play by me. I should have been keeping more careful track of my deck. And so anyway, I'm going to do that. I'm going to groom that estate. And unfortunately, I have quite bad lag here, so I do have to reload. So I'll groom that estate, I'll play that horse, and now I decide to forge away the werewolf and the ghost town in order to get a province, because I really want to double here, because I know that my opponent can't. I consider trashing this estate. I don't really need the extra point, and I think that it's a little bit bad having the 2 junk cards, so I do decide to trash that estate, getting a double province. So my opponent continues to draw deck, just swimming through those coppers, and, well, there's that slight anti-synergy with Ironmonger and Ghost Town, but it isn't really a big deal. My opponent has a bunch of Ironmongers, and so they can basically kick off even without the Ghost Towns. So my opponent needs to build back up a little bit here because they just trashed both of their silvers, but I guess they decided they really need their turn to continue, so they groomed an estate, maybe the forge bottom decked or something, and then I guess my opponent basically has to hope for me to dud at this point because they cannot double, so they get one province, and then they get a duchy, and so here I basically just need to get a province, and if I do, I win, and if I don't, I lose. I find my forge here, but I can't actually keep it. If I draw it here, then I actually lose if I don't draw anything better. But fortunately, I do draw my werewolf here, so this is basically going to be game. I'll just play my werewolves and buy the last province. And that will be the first game. Anyway, Dominar did want to play again, so I figured why not. I mean, just getting in a bunch of games is going to be the only way to get better. Alright, so looks like we've got another single province engine here. We've got Mission, which is going to be really important because we've got Page. This is going to allow our travelers to cycle super fast. We've got Way of the Seal, so you can either open 4-4 or 5-3 on this board. 5-3, definitely the better opening. You can get Sentry, hopefully trying to top deck the Sentry. So you cycle your travelers really fast. You go Mission to get faster. You definitely want to Ghost Ship pretty early on because this is going to slow down your opponent's cycling. And you can also Mission just to play Ghost Ship. So that is pretty nice. Just because this is a single province board, it seems like even though there's a bunch of engine components, the amount of engine that you can actually build is pretty limited, since getting an engine component would be instead of getting a province. And so you probably want like a few engine components at the beginning so that you'd be cycling through your travelers faster, but near the end of the game, you probably just want to be playing hero and getting province and getting those golds into your deck for better consistency. Alright, so in the actual game, my opponent does get 5, so they get a Sentry. I also open 3-5, so it's nice and even Steven. This is definitely Page Sentry for both of us. I'm going to get to top deck my Sentry, and my opponent will get to top deck a Page, and so that'll be pretty even. I suppose I definitely would prefer to top deck the Sentry, just because the Sentry would guarantee you a clean shuffle. So then my opponent has 5. This is probably a Ghost Ship. They could get another Sentry here, but I think you definitely want to be attacking your opponent as early and as often as possible. So they get the Ghost Ship. Fortunately, they aren't able to top deck. I'm a little worried that my Page might miss here, or that I wouldn't be able to hit 5 for the Ghost Ship, but fortunately, I do reveal an Overgrown Estate, so this is going to allow me to get the Ghost Ship. And this Necropolis, I might want to discard it, but I'm going to want to top deck a Ghost Ship here, and so I'm going to want to use the +2 actions to combo with the Ghost Ship. Not sure if that was the greatest move, but I get to top deck my Ghost Ship. So now here, my opponent gets another Page. This is definitely a good move because eventually that Page will become a hero, and that'll be good for the extra consistency. So unfortunately here, I don't actually get my Treasure Hunter, so I'll just have to mission in order to play my Treasure Hunter. But this is going to be a pretty productive turn. I'm going to get my Treasure Hunter, I'm going to play that Ghost Ship just to cycle cards. And unfortunately, I do draw a dud here, except for I do at least get to play mission, or I mean, I get to buy mission, so there's that. Unfortunately, my opponent has also found the greatness of mission, and so fortunately, their warrior play is just going to discard a hovel, because that's all I top decked. Unfortunately, I don't actually get to buy anything here, but I do get to cycle my treasures, I mean, my travelers at least. So I also get a nice trash here. I buy mission just for fun. So here my opponent gets another Page, and at this point I probably should have been paying more attention. I should have, like, figured what they were going for here, but I don't. I just end up going for my champion. And with my mission turn here, I get to get my champion out, and I also get to attack them before they can, so that is actually going to be pretty nice. I just figured I'd get that attack in while possible, but in exchange, I don't get a gold or anything else like that. my opponent has a bunch of travelers, so these missions are serving my opponent quite well. They're going to get their hero here, and so I have 6 coin here. I buy the mission just to attack them one last time. In retrospect, probably a mistake, but anyway, I do that. And I also get some trashes on coppers, so that's going to be pretty nice. I don't get any more money, which is going to be a little problematic since I still don't have enough to hit province. I guess I'll get a gold next turn and then try to province from then on out. But anyway, my opponent here is going to keep on missioning. This is going to allow the travelers to basically cycle twice per turn since my opponent is pretty thin. Alright, so now I have a very thin deck, maybe almost too thin for my own good. I have 7 here, so I'm going to get a gold and try to province from now on. But my opponent, unfortunately, is already a step ahead of me. They've got that warrior for the +2 cards, and they've got the hero, so they're constantly pumping out golds. So it's not looking too good at this point. I will be in position to province from now on, but my opponent already gets the province, trashing their hovel. And so I trash this Necro because it's not really good anymore. To be totally honest, not entirely sure why I kept it the first time, but I trash it, get the province, and I hope I can hold on. But basically, we're just greening at this point. I have enough for another province, so I'm just going to do that. And at this point, the ghost ship doesn't really matter anymore. It's just a lab. We both have one. My opponent gets another province, but fortunately I'm not going to dud this turn, so I stay in it. So at this point, my opponent, if they're smart, they'll get a duchy, realizing their deck is much more consistent than mine. And so they do manage, they do get the duchy, which is smart by them. I really should have, kept one of those provinces so I could have top deck gold, but I don't think it matters. I get the duchy, and we're just going to keep going until the duchies run out. They give 8 here, but fortunately they don't realize I don't have 8, so I get a duchy. And the game goes on, but this is not looking too good at this point. My opponent keeps on getting more and more golds, and at this point, I do miss 5, which was kind of inevitable. Yeah, so after moping around for a little bit and thinking about what I would do, I don't really think an estate would help at this point. And so I eventually decide that I want a guide because this will, not like it's really going to matter, but it definitely helps with these decks with all this green. My opponent gets another duchy, and at this point I have to go for province since I'm way behind. I can't just get another duchy at this point. So here I'm going to decide to top deck the duchy, actually, just so I don't draw my ghost ship, get a province, but it's not really going to matter. I'm fairly certain my opponent has enough for the province at this point since their deck just keeps getting better, not worse. So I give him the GG. Definitely very well played by Dominar. So, single province games, definitely very interesting, different kind of board, where building only gets you so far. You can only build to one province instead of being able to build quadratically every turn. In single province boards, you definitely want to have a different mindset. You want to start provincing as early as possible, so long as you remain consistent, and you want to add payload by getting more consistent, either by adding more engine parts or more money, basically just decreasing the chance of a dud. So, in that first game, my opponent trashed all their money, which turned out to be a pretty big mistake because they couldn't threaten to double. Basically, they left themselves in a pretty vulnerable spot, having to forge and only getting one province then. Then, in the second game, there was my mistake. I need to think about getting multiple pages. They're pretty good with mission. I think in that second game, I was just grinding out to champion with mission, which is usually pretty good, except for the champion in that game didn't really have all that much use, and you gotta think about what the other travelers can do for you. In that game, my opponent took advantage of all the different travelers on the page line, using the warrior for draw, using the hero to gain extra golds, all helping them become more consistent, and ultimately making it so that I did it before them. Alright, you guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!